This next day of our Contiki, I was originally going to join up with the days afterwards, but upon reflection, thinking about it, I decided that that didn't necessarily feel like the right option. So I'm giving it its whole video all on its own. And just so you know, this video is not going to be like any of the ones that have ever come before. This one is going to be quite different. Also, I actually didn't film anything this entire day. I literally took one picture on my phone and that was it all day. So any images that I have in this will be ones that I found for historical reference and stuff, and we've also asked some of the others, some of my friends, to add in their little bits of information as well. So now that you're kind of wondering what on earth is this video about, on the 29th day of our Contiki, we visited Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria. And that is what this video is about. Like I said, I got some of the others to give me some of their thoughts and opinions and what their experience was of visiting Mauthausen, and I will put in their videos as well. And I've also got my own, obviously. But first I thought I would give some history and some information on Mauthausen concentration camp to set the context. Just a side note, this is just a snippet of the history of the camp, just a little taster of it, otherwise we'll be here for hours because, you know, history. But anyway, in March of 1938 it was announced that a concentration camp would be opened near the town of Mauthausen in Upper Austria. Political opponents and groups of people labelled as criminal or antisocial would be imprisoned here and forced to work in the granite mines. On the 8th of August 1938, the first prisoners were transferred to Mauthausen from Dachau concentration camp. They were all German and Austrian men. They had to build their own camp and set up operations in the granite mines. Their daily life was shaped by hunger, arbitrary treatment and violence. Mauthausen quickly gained a reputation for fatality even among its peer camps. In December of 1939, the SS ordered the construction of a second camp just a few kilometers from Mauthausen. This camp was named Gusen and came into operation in May 1940. After the outbreak of war, the camp became a detention center for anti-Nazis from all over Europe, including 10,000 Spanish Republicans. In November 1941, Soviet prisoners of war began arriving. The first Jews arrived in May of 1941, but Jews were a small minority of the camp prisoners until 1944, when Jews from Poland and Hungary greatly increased the camp's population. Still later, Mauthausen absorbed survivors from the infamous death marches from evacuated extermination camps, which meant it gradually developed into a system of several interconnected camps. During this phase, Mauthausen and Gusen were the concentration camps with the harshest imprisonment conditions and the highest number of deaths. The prisoners at the bottom of the camp's hierarchy had barely any chance of surviving for long. Those who were ill or useless to the SS were in constant danger of their lives. In 1941, the SS started to construct a gas chamber and other installations for the systematic murder of large groups of people. All the prisoners carried the official instructions of return not desired. And the inmates were starved, beaten, used for medical experiments, and subjected to the most grueling work, especially in the local mines. The Nazis delivered unruly prisoners and captured escapees from other camps to Mauthausen for punishment by beating, hard labor, shooting, or gassing. During the second half of the war, the prisoners, who now included women for the first time, were increasingly used as forced labor in the arms industry. In order to accommodate all of the prisoners, the SS established several sub-camps. Newly arrived prisoners were transferred to these camps from the main camp. More and more, Mauthausen itself became a camp where the sick and weak were sent to die. Since the prisoners were now needed for their labour, living conditions improved for a short time. From the end of 1943 onwards, inmates were also deployed in the construction of underground factories. The murderous working conditions that prevailed at these sites soon led to a dramatic rise in the number of victims. Towards the end of the war, the Mauthausen concentration camp became a destination for evacuations from camps near the front line. Tens of thousands of prisoners arrived in several large transports. Overcrowding, lack of food, and rampant disease led to mass death among the prisoners months before the camp was liberated. The SS fled Mauthausen shortly before American troops arrived at the camp on the 5th of May 1945. Some prisoners were in such a weakened state that many still died in the days and weeks after liberation. Around 200,000 prisoners passed through Mauthausen and its subcamps over the 7 years. At least 120,000 died from starvation, disease, and the hardships of labour.
The Mauthausen concentration camp was quite a heavy experience for me. I got to see where it all happened and found out about what happened there, what people went through on a day-to-day basis, all the struggles they went through, the suffering that happened. It was quite an intense day. I think the biggest thing for me was seeing that list of names of all the people that were there and hearing that there were others that were just unaccounted for, hearing how many had passed. It's one thing to hear the numbers of the people that were there, but to see that list really puts it in perspective. It was quite eye-opening, honestly. Yeah.
Candace didn't want to do a video bit for it, so she's written something. I've got it here and I'm going to read it out for you. She also wanted me to share that the history of the Holocaust and exactly what happened, like her personal knowledge of it is very limited. She didn't do history at school, it wasn't her field of interest, so yeah, she just wanted to make sure that that was known. Here's her few words for her opinion of Mauthausen concentration camp. When I stepped off the coach, I had prepared myself for the venture. Nothing about this was going to be enjoyable, but I was so unprepared for the total lack of feeling the place gave to me. It had no soul, no aura, but a heavy, cold presence. While I couldn't ever fully understand the events that happened here, the loss of humanity that plagued that place will never be forgotten.
Hi, my name's Alec Muir and I travelled with Sarah around Europe for 37 days, and today I'm going to talk about the concentration camp. It was a very unique experience travelling with Sarah, and when we got to Mauthausen concentration camp, everything kind of changed. Everybody on the bus prior to going there was always in a good mood, everybody was happy, lots of laughing, all that kind of stuff. When we got there, we all kind of went our separate ways. I think it was good to be in your own headspace, just by yourself. I wandered around for a wee bit reading all the names and everything like that. It's interesting because the things you see you don't really think about too much. Oh, it's a building, it's things like that. It's not until you see things that have been described to you in movies or books or on TV. There was something in the air. There was just something you could feel, something that caused you to think. The hardest part for me was when we went down into the chambers, because that's where I lost it. After the chambers, I came back out and continued to wander around the place, see what was what. It was very hard. I think what was also interesting about the place is that you could spot the tourists because they were very respectful of the area in which we were in, and we found that the school kids who were on a field trip or something from the local schools or whatnot, I don't want to say they were disrespectful, I'm just saying that, you know, I think they've had so much exposure to it that, you know, it's just a day out of the classroom for them. I found that a little bit interesting and hard to cope with. I have to say, when we all got back on the coach after having spent an hour or more there, we've gone from an environment in which was happy and everybody was laughing to a very quiet, very respectful coach where everybody was in a time of reflection about where we'd been, the significance of it, and the suffering that people have gone through so we can be where we are today. Definitely an eye-opener. I definitely recommend going to one of these places, whether it be the one we went to or a different one. Yeah, there is something in the air that does hold you back, I guess. Yeah.
It, for me, was such an emotional day. It was such a big thing and such to process. This might sound a bit weird, but I have always wanted to go to one of the concentration camps. I spent basically my entire time at school doing history, and one of the main things that we learned about, and I think one of the main things that a lot of us learn about in history at school, is World War II. And so I had a lot of general knowledge about the Holocaust, about World War II, and about what happened in the concentration camp. And I wanted to go and visit a concentration camp to take it in, to make it real, that this horrific thing that happened in our grandparents and great-grandparents' lives, to take it in and be like, holy shit, that was actually real, that actually did happen. It isn't just some bizarre story that somebody has created and then spread around the world. We arrived at Mauthausen, and our little group, Harry, Alec, Candace, myself, Nat and Kelly, kind of entered together. We didn't go straight into the camp. We didn't go through the gate straight away. Instead, we wandered down to where the stairs of death were. It's kind of at this point that we all kind of separated, but Candace and I kind of stuck together while also being separate. We all knew that everybody needed to be able to process this place and its history individually, while also still kind of being near each other. So we first went down to the stairs of death, and this was a staircase that was built, I think, for the granite mine that was right beside Mauthausen itself. And the prisoners would have to haul the rocks up this staircase, and it's a steep, narrow steps all the way back up the hill. From there we kind of walked up and to the actual main gates of the camp itself, and went into the Mauthausen concentration camp. One of the biggest things that stood out to me was that I don't recall seeing any birds within the walls of the camp itself. I could hear them on the outside of the walls, but I don't recall seeing them within the walls, sitting on the walls, on the roofs of the buildings. They flew over, but they didn't seem to stop there. Personally, I wanted to walk through and step into every building and throughout every part of it. It was just something that I personally wanted to do. We made our way through the camp, reading signs, taking it in, all that kind of stuff. This particular exterior of the camp itself, while impactful, because there were so many other people there, so there was our group, there was several other tourists, and also a school group there, a secondary school group. You didn't really quite get the vibe of the camp itself in that area and everything. I then went into the museum and walked around the displays and stuff and took in some of the photos and such that was there. I didn't read very much of it. There was a lot of information and I would have had to have been there all day to read it all. The part that got to me the most and was the most impactful was when I went downstairs into what had once been the killing chambers. The first room that you walk into, it's not a very big room. Around and on the walls of this particular room were photographs and portraits of people that had been in the camp, that possibly had lost their lives in the camp. I can't tell you exactly, I don't remember reading the sign that gave information with that. I was too distracted by looking at the faces of the people. This room now provided a small selection of faces, of moments of people who had had their lives just cruelly torn from them, their lives forever changed in a way that so many of us today could not understand. But it was the next room that I walked into that will stay in my mind and that I will remember for the rest of my life. The next room had the names. That's all that was in the room. On black backlit boards where the names were white and lit from beneath was just the list of names of people who had lost their lives at Mauthausen. I walked into the room and my heart just shattered. I just started sobbing. And in the middle, in a space probably about this big, was blank. For those whose names they don't know. There's names that we don't know who were killed there. I don't even have words to describe how that felt and how it was. I literally just walked through the room, running my fingers over names and sobbing and just hugging my scarf. This was reality. This had happened, and these are the people who had had their lives just torn from them in a way that I could never ever understand. I think it's so important that everyone goes to visit a place like one of the concentration camps in Europe, or just a place anywhere on this planet where something horrific has happened. I think everyone should go to them, to these places, and walk through the gates and just take it in, take in the reality of it, to have their heart broken by it, to feel the pain and the grief that comes from those histories and those places, and to just cry and to just grieve about it, to remember that these horrors, yes, they happened in the past, and our history is littered with moments and periods like these, but also to remember that it still happens today, that through hate, people are being killed today, right now, as I'm filming this, as you're watching this, all over the world. Nobody should have their lives taken or changed or ruined because of hate. We need to stop. We need to stop hate. It's a discussion that is happening so much all over the world right now, and I fully stand beside it. Fully agree that hate, no matter what form it comes in, needs to end. One of the ways that I personally process really big moments where there's strong emotion or whatever is to write about it. And while I walked around Mauthausen, I had words starting to form sentences in my mind. As soon as I got onto the coach, I literally turned to the others and was like, don't talk to me, I need to get this out. And I ended up writing a poem. The poem isn't exclusively about Mauthausen, it's about anything. It's about hate, really, I guess, and those who have lost their lives through hate. And I thought that I would share this poem that I wrote with you. It's called To Those Who have been taken through injustice or in hate. I give you my heart and offer you my hand. My tears fall freely, but I will never shed enough to grow the flowers for you who have been taken. I pray that you are in a place of love, where hope is the winds and faith is the sea, where freedom is the grass and life is the trees. To those who still are here, do not forget that which has been. Let your heart break and your head be bowed and your tears be free, for they will always be remembered and it will never be repeated.